camera. No. Is that better? Maybe it's just the lighting here. Okay. Peter's a massage therapist. She's also a strength and conditioning coach and a athlete of mythic proportions. Her one of many sports currently is surfboat rowing and is in the Victorian champion crew. But we're talking today about self-massage, what it can do, what it can't do, and Peter's going to run through some of the problem areas that parkour athletes can have. I've said in particular hip flexors, tibialis anterior, and general forearm massage, but if you have questions about specifics that you're having trouble with, please be sure to ask Petey. But I will pass you over now, and we'll get started. Thank you. Okay, so first up, you have the ball behind you. Let's bring this down onto the ground and get the dog out of the way. All right, I think that might be better. Anyway, switch that up a bit. Down a bit. Oh, sorry, this is super unprofessional. I'd love to be able to put it like at that height. All right, so what we're going to do first is, can you pass that paper for me? So Kel asked me to talk about hip flexors, forearms, tib ant, which is very interesting. Not many athletes find that a problem area, so that's really fascinating for me. And forearms and lower limb generally. What I'd actually like to do is use those areas as examples, but actually go through this in with a concept. So I'm going to assume people have like a basic understanding of foam rolling and stuff. Most people have done quite, a bit to a lot of foam rolling in the past. So I thought actually the most applicable thing would be for me to assume some prior knowledge. So please forgive me if this, almost leaves you behind, but I feel like I'd be better serving the community. I'd be better serving the community by trying to bring something slightly new to the table. Anyways, Kel, is it supposed to be doing that? Yeah, okay. So what I'd like to talk about is you've got your basic foam rolling, which is finding a way to apply pressure to a muscle and then applying that pressure in your manner of choice over the length of the muscle, right? I prefer slow, sustained pressure on a muscle. So that would be like, if you're rolling your quads, taking an entire minute to get from the hip to the knee rather than just lying and rolling up and down. Yeah. What I'm gonna introduce today is what I call the pin and stretch method. I can't remember if I've heard it referred to as anything else, but it's just a pretty basic concept. I think there's a bit of light going towards the camera there. So what are we doing? Mobility is based on a lot of things. The thing that foam rolling affects is muscle fiber length or muscle fiber consistency specifically. So mobility can be affected by, oh, that's so much better. Should it do that?
Sorry, I'm trying to get a better image for you.
Mobility can be affected by bones, tendons, joints, primarily nervous system, which foam rolling also works on. So basically what the concept here is this is a muscle length and you want to make that muscle longer. So if I poke on it, whoop, oh, watch me fuck this up. I poke on it and that makes the muscle have to go around that poke because you're not changing its attachment at either end, right? And the concept there is that this line is longer than this line. Got it? So what do we do with pin and stretch is rather than a passive poke, we poke, make the muscle into this longer line, and then stretch and contract the muscle underneath. Okay. Am I making sense? Yeah.
So I'll just ask a question there, just for clarification. So when you're doing that with a muscle, which is a bunch of fibers, you're effectively doing that to several of the fibers in a bunch, and then you would move and do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, so there's cross fiber and along fiber things happening there. So you're going across fiber friction across a bunch of fibers horizontally, and you're also moving up and down the fiber longitudinally, vertically, whatever you want. That is the concept of pin and stretch. If I were doing that to treat my forearm, what would I do? I would find a spot that's tight. Oh, this is bad. Find a spot that's tight. Okay, so I've pressed on a spot that's tight, and then I am using the muscle to actively lengthen and shorten underneath that. So that would be an active pin and stretch. Okay. So what we're going to work on is with your tool. So, Duff, can you move out of my way, please? Foam roller. What can I say? If you don't have a foam roller, get one. Like, they're so cheap these days, there's really no reason not to. Ta-da. Long, short, whatever. Let's go for hips, or basically, so hip flexors are very difficult to treat yourself. In fact, as a my professional opinion is that of the hip flexors, there's really only one you can treat yourself, because the other ones are behind your abdominal wall and attaching to your spine from the front. So, you know, some people suggest treating your own hip flexors. So if I were to treat my own hip flexors, I would go in here with enough pressure to sink through the abdominal wall, move organs out of the way. I'm going to say that again. The organs move out of the way, and then I would wait until that pressure reached the psoas and the psoas and the iliacus, and then I would use that pressure to treat them. I do that in my job. I never do that to myself. So that's my opinion. You know, if you want to treat your own hip flexors, go ahead. Like, it's quite rare that you rupture intestine. But basically, I don't think it's effective. Honestly, my professional opinion is that self-treatment of the psoas is ineffective. Iliacus is more in the bowl, like this. So that's your pelvis. Iliacus is more inside the bowl. So you can kind of lie face down on a ball and get pressure into the iliacus a bit, like the edge of it. Again, less dangerous, also less effective. So if we want to do a short section on the hip flexors at the end, because I don't put hip flexors into the self-manual treatment basket. There are other things you can do for them. So the hip flexors that you can treat is called the TFL. So basically, that lip of the bowl of the pelvis that I just described, it's on the other side. If you stand up, I'm going to pretend I'm standing up here, put your hand there, and then internally rotate your leg. Internally rotate your leg. The muscle that pops up here, that's your TFL. Okay.
Can I just clarify something there? Which I found confusing. You actually externally rotated your foot. So
yep.
She's talking about internally rotating the femur.
So when your knee is bent, externally rotating the ankle internally rotates the femur. When the knee is straight, internally rotating the foot internally rotates the femur. But basically, if you just wiggle it, the muscle that pops up when you go back and forth is your TFL. It's sort of there, okay? TFL fibers blend directly into your glute max fibers. So TFL and glute max function are intrinsically linked and very, very important. So it's a great muscle to get into. And then other hip flexor is one of the quads, the rec fem. So that is like the quad that's basically bang in the middle, like it's a rope bang in the middle from hip to patella. Okay, so what are we going to do in terms of pin and stretch? Yeah. So if I were just to roll my quad, let's start with rec fem. If I were just to roll my quad, that's what I would do, getting as much pressure as I possibly can along it. All right, pin and stretch. And another reason I thought this would be a better way to go about this, because we do have a short amount of time. Also, who's got time for foam rolling? Like pin and stretch, professionally, I use it to get more done in less time, which is what we always want to do, because foam rolling, you don't have tons of time for it usually. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, whatever. More bang for buck is better. And also, if you're doing it pre-training, spending too much time on a muscle, stretching or externally touching a muscle will deactivate it. Okay, so it's you've got your activations, which wake a muscle up, get more nerves firing, get it more ready to go. Deactivations are static stretching and prolonged massage or touch. Deactivate muscles, put them to sleep, make them less effective during your training. Deactivated muscles are more likely to lead to injury. So pin and stretch allows you to quickly release a muscle without over deactivating it. Okay, so anyway, we're foam rolling, we've rolled along, we've found a part of that quad, a part of that rec fem, which is a hip flexor, that feels tender. It feels like it's sore, it feels like it needs to be foam rolled. And then what do? We lengthen and contract that muscle. How do we do that? If you think about it, the rec fem, the quads, as well as flexing at the hip, straighten the knee. So that's what we do. And you do that, say 4 or 5 times for that sore spot. What it should feel is gets more and more tender as the muscle gets longer and longer, less tender as it straightens out. Then you find a new spot, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., and then you do that, I don't know, 5 different spots along the length of a muscle. The quads are a long muscle. Okay, there we go. And so what have I done there? I've sort of treated, released, done whatever your foam rolling wants to achieve to a muscle in for a third of the time that it would take me with a traditional foam rolling method. Okay, that makes this my foam rolling method of choice for pre-training. I only do very little foam rolling pre-training, and it also makes it my foam rolling method of choice for a lot of places when it's not pre-training, it's just for maintenance and treatments of muscles, because it saves time. There's nothing less effective about this method vis-a-vis a slower, traditional type method. Cool. Okay, so that's that concept for your rec fem. We'll go through a few examples, but what I want to emphasize with this is what is the advantage in making muscles fibers longer? Okay, do you want me to answer that question as they go, or questions at the end?
Whatever suits you best.
Okay. The advantage in making a muscle fiber longer. So first thing I'd like to say is I've probably misled in saying that it creates a longer muscle fiber. The actual physical length of the muscle fiber doesn't change. When we say it makes the muscle fibers longer, that's actually shorthand for it makes your central nervous system more comfortable with the muscle in an elongated position. Okay, so when we feel tight, it's because your body has identified a certain sort of level of length in a muscle as dangerous and unstable, and it will not let you go further. Okay, so that's why they say, and this is partially myth and stuff, but if you're under sedation, they say anyone can do the splits. That's not true, but if you're under sedation, you are bendier than you are when you're awake, because your body is controlling the length that your muscles get to in order to keep you safe at the joints and generally. Okay, so when you do a pin and stretch specifically, or any kind of muscle release or anything, even stretching, what you're doing is getting your central nervous system to become tolerate a muscle in a more lengthened position, because muscle fibers are elastic. They go stretchy, they go unstretchy, but just like the length of rubber band, the actual length of the rubber band doesn't change. Does that make sense? So there are ways to create longer muscle fibers. We can talk about that another time. That's a long process. It doesn't happen in a session. If you get increased muscle length in a session, that's central nervous system toleration of a different position. I feel like I went over that way too much.
I could follow it, but maybe you could talk about the rubber band analogy. Just that muscles are elastic.
Yeah.
You could just...
So muscles are elastic. They've got a resting length, and then they've got a lengthened length. You can actually build a muscle that is longer with a certain type of training, so create yourself a new section of rubber band so that the resting length is longer, and then therefore the stretch length is also longer. Or you can work on just stretching that rubber band. Okay, and that's stretching, that's foam rolling. But the more you kind of gently and controllably stretch that rubber band, the more your body's going to get used to position. So then you can get into a better stretched position, or you can get into a more mobile position without having to create that extra length. Okay, foam rolling is about creating tolerance, not length.
Can I ask, is that also related to injury prevention? I'm thinking of, say, the photo of a AFL footballer with their hamstring, a full length kick. If your body is more tolerant of getting into an extended position and a long muscle strength, you're less likely to have a snap or a tear at that end of range. Is that...
You are less likely to have a snap or a tear at that end of range, but not completely, not completely.
Yeah.
It's
don't go doing a death drop.
Yeah, people love to have this black and white kind of thing. It is, I don't know a single thing in strength and conditioning that isn't a continuum. So if you are super, super flexy but really weak, you might get a tear that's due to muscle weakness. But then if you're really, really strong but very stiff, you might get a tear that's due to muscle shortness. Like, you know what I mean? And there's really, you cannot have it all. Like, you can't deadlift 800 kilos and put your ankles behind your head.
Unless the bones break.
So you've got to find your spot on that strength to mobility continuum that serves your body, your sport best, and your body best, and keeps you out of injury the best. And don't worry, no one's good at it. Fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, do best. Okay, all right, TFL. TFL's another hip flexor and external rotator, internal rotator, pardon me. Runners, if you get pain, you might want to plug in your PC. If you get pain from running or a rubbing sensation at the top lateral corner, your patella is an upside down triangle, the top outside corner of the patella, if you get rubbing or get pain there, very, very often that's coming from the TFL. TFL, unlike most muscles, which are a large muscle with short tendon, TFL is effectively a muscle that's about that long, and a tendon, or the ITB, a flat tendon type thing, it's about that long. Okay, so treat the muscle, not the tendon.
Can I just ask quickly, because a lot of people do what they call an ITB massage.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the connection between the ITB and the TFL?
The ITB is the TFL's muscle. The ITB is the TFL's tendon.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the ITB is a connective band. It serves the same function as a tendon. You can hang a mini off ITB. You can hang like a mini car off an ITB. Basically, it's the same consistency as that really thick blue plastic tape, that not tape, strapping that you get around international parcels. Like, you cannot massage it to a different consistency. You can hang a car off it. So don't attack the ITB. The other thing about the ITB is it passes directly on top of the lateral quads. The lateral quads are notoriously like just really, really sensitive nervously. Like they just feel like shit to treat. That's why massaging the ITB feels like shit. It's not the ITB, it's the quads, because you can't hit the ITB without hitting the quads, and the quads are yucky. They feel yucky to treat. And so, you know, I'm all for a little bit of pain to get the treatment that you want, but that's just needless pain. You're not getting the treatment that you are aiming for. Okay, so this one, let's see what we can do. So basically, that's my ITB. That's my ball. I'm now on it, and you can't see this way, but okay, so there I am. Now, I'm going to try and externally, so the ITB is an internal rotate, I'm trying to externally rotate the hip. If I lift my ankle up, that's rotating the femur on top of that ball, okay? Sorry if the angle's like real shit, but under the TFL, bend the knee, lift, 2, 3, 4, 5, ta-da, okay? And that is pin and stretch, one method of the TFL. Also, I don't know how much guys, I mean, I think you probably do a lot, but being able to actively internally rotate, really hard. That's a really good thing to practice. So that is how I would treat the hip flexors. Obviously, these are just examples. We're doing this as fast as we can. To move this concept along, lower leg, tib, post, tib, ant, calves. I know you guys need that a lot. It's a sport that's very specifically bouncy at the foot and ankle, which is great. But tib ant is one of the least commonly sort of treated. People fucking leave it alone all the time. So basically, what is tib ant? Okay, tib ant. There we go. And it actually attaches around under the foot, and it does this. It lifts the toe. So plantar, the dorsiflexors the foot. There it is there, popping up. The shank. It's super tough. So basically, pretty hard to treat. I like to do this often on a chair, but I obviously don't have a chair here. But how can we do this? So I've got a nice big ball. sort of the size of my head. This is like $4 at Kmart, and I find it's a really good halfway point between, maybe it's $8, I don't know, between a very hard, tough lacrosse ball. This is a bit squishier and a bit bigger, but it's not quite as big as foam roller, so it's quite useful. I do everything backwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we doing now? Okay, so my foot is fully plantar flexed now, so my tib ant is on full stretch. I can get a bit more weight on it. I'm using my shoulders and body to take some of my weight. So I'm not putting my full body weight on it, but there we go. I've got that pressure on my tib ant now, and owie. See what I mean? It's very, very sore. So I'm actively flexing and pointing my ankle while that pressure is on tib ant. If it's much more, to the sides, so basically tib ant is like here, perineals is like here. So they're right next to each other. Perineals is really on the side, tib ant's right there. Treat both, treat either, doesn't matter which one you are. If it's sore in a spot, treat that spot, doesn't matter what you call the muscle. But then, this is so hard. Sorry, I've got to move in the opposite direction than I think I do, so I can't, anyway. So then basically you can also do it like this. So I can lean over and then, ooh, ee. There we go. Tib ant is point, perineals is invert, evert, if that makes sense, okay? Or, and you can lean forward, ow, ee. Does that make sense? Okay. Another thing you can use this for at this area is there's a lot going on connective tissue wise here. There's a lot of fascia, there's tendons, there's compartments. There is a lot going on. If you want to try and get some of that fascia moving and you get into a position where you can drag and you start feeling like a bit of a Chinese burn, lean into that. Chinese burn is fascia. Chinese burn, I'm sorry about the term. I'm really sorry about the term, but remember, give me a hand. Remember in primary school when you grab someone's wrist and go, and it feels burny, okay? That burning sensation is fascia. Fascia has its own sort of nervous system-ish. And that sensation is it separating or moving or, you know, and that is good for that whole area.
Can I just ask a question here? So one of the ways that fascia is often described is like the muscle fibers are in kind of a sandwich casing. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. Sandwich. I said sandwich, I meant sausage.
Yeah, sausage casing, exactly. So if you've ever gotten a chicken breast and you can peel off a very thin layer of see-through cellophane stuff, that's fascia. So if you grab it and if you like pull it, it's very, very strong. If you tear it, it tears easily. Okay, so it's very thin and very strong in one plane, but quite delicate. Fascia is around every muscle fiber. It's around bunches of muscle fibers, and it's around muscles, and it's around muscle groups. Okay. We can't get into this because we'll talk for days if we're talking about fascia, but it's very important, and it is a connective tissue. And when we treat muscles, we are also always having an effect on the fascia.
So you want to stop fascia adhering to any of those muscle groups or muscle fibers?
Yes. What I'd like to say about that is adhesions, terms like adhesions, it hasn't been like proven that that's a thing. You can't identify them. So it's not that you're like searching for an adhesion to destroy it. What you're doing is just searching for limitations in movement and facilitating more movement in that area. Okay. Tib ant. Okay. The other thing you can do with tib ant is, okay, if you know anything about trigger points, there are certain areas you can Google this where the most likely place for a trigger point in tib ant is. In any muscle is, you can Google it. That doesn't mean there will be one on you. That it's just there are spots where they're most commonly found. Tib ant, it's about there. Okay, so what you can do, don't ever do this with one finger, just do it with the whole lot because there's too much pressure on just one. Find that spot, lean back, and then do that. Okay. You can keep looking for those points. Then again, they're not necessarily where the maps say they're going to be, but yeah.
Will finding a trigger point always refer pain?
Finding a trigger point will not always refer pain, but referred pain is a good indication of a trigger point. It doesn't matter if you do or don't have referred pain. It doesn't matter if you do or don't have it, or call it a trigger point. Find something, have a feeling, poke it, move the joint.
So I just want to clarify there. So referred pain is when you feel the pain in a site that's not the one that you're touching, and it is generally good, neither good nor bad.
Referred pain?
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to have referred pain. You know, it's just that something to be kind of aware of. Like if you, for instance, I think off the top of my head, tib ant refers around here. I can't remember. I should be able to. I think tib ant refers down the side of the leg and onto the medial front of the foot. So if I, for instance, I press here and I feel a pain here, you know, that if you get a referred pain, if I am treating myself and I get a referred pain, what I do is I hold that spot until that referred pain goes away. And then generally I feel better. Okay.
So you can use it as an indicator.
It is a good, useful indicator, but it's not necessary. And it's not it's not scientifically super duper proven to be linked to eradicating trigger points or whatever. The whole trigger point theory is a theory. Nerves do weird things. I can reliably recreate referred pain in people in plenty of spots, and I don't even, you know, they may or may not be unwell or whatever. Like, it's just a thing the body does, which is pretty cool.
Too long didn't read, body's weird.
Too long didn't read, body's weird. Love it. Okay, now that's tib ant. I recommend if you have tib ant issues, do a lot of your people have tib ant issues?
Not issues, but we tend to get fatigue there because the landing is in a flex position. So we tend to impact in an almost flex position.
Gotcha.
So can tend to have overdeveloped
tib ant. Okay, tib ant, very small, very tough muscle. So if you do have an issue, treat it consistently for, you know, so every other day for up to, you know, 4 weeks or so, I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks. If it's not responding straight away like another muscle does, don't worry, don't go harder, just keep consistent at it, okay?
Can I just ask something there too? It's pretty common to have for drivers to have a right tib that's sore, is that right?
Oh yeah, tib ant. Although I would say that potentially not for you guys, because that would, you know, most people really just do not use their tib ant because, you know, we don't herd goats up mountains anymore, and we don't, like, you know, even swimming, you don't really ever use it to its full length. Like for you guys, for most people who don't use their tib ant, driving is the one thing where you do use your tib ant. So manual driving, because you're taking your toes off the clutch and shit all the time. For you guys, maybe not so much because you have strong tib ants. So driving is like not a load for you as it is for most people. But yeah, I mean, props for having good tib ants. You don't see many of them. Tib post. So when I say tib, we're talking about tibialis. Tibialis is your big shin bone. You've got two bones in your shin, tibialis and fibularis. Fib is the skinny little one on the side. So this guy, tibialis is the big fat, traditional shin bone. So tibialis anterior. Anterior means front. So that's the tibialis muscle on the front of the shin. Post is behind the shin. So tib post is what is most commonly blamed for shin splints. If you hook your fingers around your shin, most people, like basically what it is there's a bone, so that's the consistency of a bone, and then your gastric muscle, that's like a soft consistency of muscle, and then there's something in the middle there that's like softer than bone, but really a lot harder than muscle usually is. That's your tib post. Okay, it's a very tight little bunch. And if you get what we used to refer to as shin splint pain, that's actually an umbrella term for a lot of syndromes, but very, very often it's tibialis posterior. So you can hold that again, the four like a claw situation here, hold around with your thumb and pressure on that, and then be up and downy with the plantar dorsiflex of the ankle, basically. Or if you want to do that, lean on it with the ball, and then whatever, you can see my toe almost there. You're leaning on a ball, trying to get that off center from the shin bone, just behind the shin bone, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Very much recommend treating tib post. If you let it get out of hand, it is incredibly painful to get treated by someone else. So keep an eye on it every week, so you don't have to get needles put into it by someone like me. And I think I went through this with you guys last time, but my absolute favorite for the lower leg calf thing is called the bone saw. Did I go through this? Basically, you need really a chair, but I'm going to attempt to do this on a roller. Oh, I don't know. Basically, it's using one shin bone as a foam roller to come down on the other calf. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so I'm going to use this shin to treat this calf, okay? So using that shin bone to pull the muscle away from the lower shin bone, so pulling my muscle away from the shin there, and then leaning on it, okay? I'm getting pressure via my right shin onto my left calf, and then I can, if I'm hanging off a chair, I can dorsiflex and plantar flex that calf. Highly recommend doing that. Is that all the areas? Oh, sorry. You can also bone saw your own forearm. Okay, either elbow or elbow for pokey, kind of very pointy, hard pressure, forearm bone for more like spread around pressure, but basically finding a spot that feels tight and sore, and then, and that's how we treat forearm flexors. And that's how we treat forearm extensors. Okay, extensors are there. The paradox of the forearm is we are much more likely to use our flexors. So your flexors are going to be stronger. Your extensors are where you're usually going to get the most pathologies or issues. So tennis elbow is the tendons of the extensors. Golfer's elbow is the tendon of the flexors. But basically you guys are going to be really, really strong in probably forearm flexion or grabbing and holding, but often have trigger points and issues in the extensors. Extensors take a lot of load as they isometrically oppose flexion to take load, okay? So you do need to pay attention to both. Any questions?
I have some questions, but please everyone, there is a Q&A box in the bottom there, and please put in any questions no matter how specific you've got, and PD might be able to help you out. It's not medical advice, but it is advice for your training. I'm just going to run through a few questions that I have. One, of course, is when is the best time to use self-massage?
Okay. Everyone's got an opinion. I think the most widespread opinion at this point in time is, as I said briefly earlier, when we train, we want our muscles to be as awake and as activated as possible. We also want them, if they are shortened, to be lengthened enough for that training, okay? So basically, if you are feeling fine and not tight and not, you know, anything, skip foam rolling before training and go straight to activation. Activation is your biggest bang for buck pre-training thing, okay? Glute activation, lat activation, calf activation, foot activation for you guys. Like Google any kind of activation exercise. I'm sure Kel goes through them with you all the time. So if you're feeling fine and there's nothing you're specifically addressing, no need to foam roll directly before exercise. If you're feeling tight and like you need a release, small amount of foam rolling, that's why we talked about pin and stretch today, is perfect. If you go for like long, slow foam rolling, or if you go for static stretching before exercise, you then have deactivated that muscle, and you then need to also do as much or more activation work as you usually would, and then you've spent all that time and you haven't even started training yet. So am I getting that point across?
I think so. So, but if you are, is there any point in foam rolling completely outside of training?
Sorry. So I only half answered that question. So that was my argument against excessive foam rolling pre-training. So immediately pre-training, short, targeted, specific foam rolling only if necessary. After training, the benefit of foam rolling directly after training is your muscles have as much blood flow as they are going to have, as much oxygen as they are going to have. They're flowy and movey as much as they're going to have. So squishing them around a bit is going to help flatten out adhesions if adhesions exist, and you know, consistency across muscles and stuff like that. So, you know, a nice relaxing, it's also psychologically and emotionally a good way to kind of calm down your muscles. We like to be touched on the outside. So, you know, it's a systemic thing after training, so that's good. In terms of treating muscles, the best time to foam roll is outside of any training. So by that I mean more than an hour and a half before and more than an hour and a half after a training session. So at night in front of the telly or something like that, because foam rolling can also take a lot of time, and it's good to keep it away from your training sessions so you don't end up also with these training sessions that are like 4 hours long and then you're like, ugh.
Do you want the room that you're rolling in outside of training to be quite warm, or your body to be quite warm?
Yeah.
Or just, yeah.
Yeah. Again, that's just an effectiveness thing, because it's a time bang for buck thing. If you're warm, you have to do less work to warm the muscle up. The muscle has to be warm to be receptive. Half of my job as a massage therapist, like the first 10 minutes of my job is warming up. It's literally, I'm just warming up the muscle. And literally the act of warming up the muscle is as effective as me doing that warming up part. Do you know what I mean? So if you can start in a warm room or in tracksuit pants or whatever, you've done half your job. So don't fucking shoot yourself in the foot. Like, do it after a bath. Wear tracksuit pants. Have a warm room. If you've got a warm room in your house, do it then. Like, yeah. I mean, it's the same with stretching. Like, your stretching is going to be so much more effective if you literally get up and walk once around your block before you do it.
I'm just going to machine gun some questions at Petey. One thing is, when should you not foam roll? What is going to indicate that something is a problem or that you're making it worse?
Okay, let's go red flag. If you have hurt yourself, you need to learn how to identify when that is a potential tear. So basically, if you have hurt yourself, first red flag for a tear or a strain, muscle strain, is a sharp sensation on exertion of that muscle. So you kick a football or you sprint and you feel a sharp pain in your hamstring. That's a red flag for a strain. If you actively resist that muscle contracting and you recreate that sharp pain, that's a big red flag for a strain. So by that, I mean, if I suspected a bicep tear and then I try to do a bicep curl and I get that sharp pain in that place where I suspected the strain or the tear, that's a red flag. Do not ever massage within the first 72 hours of a strain. What's happened is a tear in the muscle. There's damage in the muscle. Getting in there and poking it, I don't know any situation where something is bad and poking it is good. Okay? Leave it alone for, I think it's 72 hours, just leave it alone until that resisted movement isn't sharp and it isn't above like a 5 or 6, I don't know. If it's real bad, go see someone. Do not stretch it either.
Okay, from Eden, does it need to be with a balance in what you roll and massage? i.e., if I do the outside of my leg, should I do the inside too?
That's a very good question. Answer is it depends. So I would say generally, as a general, the answer is yes. If you roll your quads, roll your hamstrings. However, if there's an imbalance pre-existing, so you have very loose hamstrings and very tight quads or vice versa,
Eden has that.
Okay, so then, do less work on the already loose side. And that goes for left to right imbalances, front to back imbalances, above and below joint imbalances. Don't completely ignore the other side, but maybe target your efforts to where it's needed. Now, what I'm going to say about that is get a professional to help you if you can, like a physio or a coach. Ask Kel or whatever. Do not fall into the trap of allowing yourself to be the decider of your own physical problems, because you're wrong. Like, everyone's wrong. People have these biases, and all of us know someone who can like put their forehead on the ground and is always complaining that they have tight hamstrings. A lot of, everyone has all these different biases, and your biases come from your upbringing, the other people in your sport, your own kind of things you have are for and against. And you also can't trust how you feel, because the two most common places to feel tight are your hamstrings and in between your shoulder blades. those two feelings of tightness usually come around from your brain trying to protect itself. So, you know, your hamstrings can be wildly loose, but feel tight because your brain knows how loose your hamstrings are and that's a danger for you. And so your brain will make your hamstrings feel tight so that you don't fuck around with them. Same thing in the shoulder blades. A lot of us spend time like this. So what does this look like? I'm tight in the front. Everything in the front is close together. Everything in the back is far apart. But I feel tight in the back because it's strung out tight. So what am I trying to say? Target your efforts to where they are needed, but be very, very careful how you decide where it's needed and what you decide where it's needed. Ask someone, talk to someone. And when in doubt, yeah, Google it. Ask me, ask Kel. But yeah, it's a very, very good question. And the answer is, as always, it depends. It's a spectrum, but generally, yes, balance both sides.
We've probably only got 5 minutes or so to keep going. One thing I would like you to cover, which is kind of your shtick, I think, at this point, is what's massage not going to achieve?
Ooh. Okay, good. So I am the anti-massage therapist. Basically, massage, self-treatment, and all that stuff has a place and has a role, but it is so limited and it is so not necessary. There is literally nothing that I do at work that is necessary. You can do it all yourself. Every intervention that you do from the outside is temporary and short-lived and in the long run ineffective. Okay, so by that I mean if your hamstrings are continually tight, okay, you can get a massage, okay, you can release them, whatever, they will go back to being tight unless you work out what's wrong. And what is wrong is usually that they're weak. Or it can be that they're short. And the solution to both of those is strength training, not more sport-specific training, and not generally massage. So what do I mean by that? Lift weights or do strength specific body weight movements. You know, you can't just run, you can't just jump, you have to, you know, calf raises, squats. You guys do heaps of this. I see you guys doing it. It's great. So if you're having an ongoing issue and rolling and massage and self-interventions have not been working for a extended period of time, get that muscle stronger. Google, ask Kel, whatever, find out either what part of that joint or what part of that muscle group needs to be stronger and then just do it. It's not hard. When in doubt, glute bridges and RDLs.
Romanian deadlifts for people who don't know that. Can I have a bit of clarification there? So the use of massage may be to give yourself enough time and feel good enough to get back to the strength training that you need, rather than actually solving the problem.
Oh, yeah, look, absolutely. Okay. So when massage and its other things we do actually deadens sensation and pain. So if you have something that's painful and you like rub it and touch it, that pain sensation will go away, and then you'll be able to do a bit of movement and get a bit stronger, and it's that movement and that strength that will actually solve the problem. But
this is tough, everyone.
But mentally, you associate that pain going away with the massage. So there's definitely a role for massage and there's definitely things that it can do. But basically what it does is just facilitate actual things that actually make change. So when in doubt, and you know, the other thing to say about that is pain is a part of life. Like, and you know, again, work with Kel on this, but if you have a certain pain that's just like pretty dull, it's not sharp and it's not, it doesn't come on with any particular movement, like you just kind of have a bit of a sore hip and it's less than a 2 or 3 out of 10, you can carry on. Pain of a low level is not a red flag, you know, and movement helps it.
Everyone watching, that's Rusty now.